Imagine stepping off a boat into what is essentially a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Oh, yeah. It would be terrifying.
Right, like the stone cities of the once mighty Roman Empire are just crumbling into ruin.
Completely abandoned.
Yeah, and the local population speaks a language you literally cannot understand. Plus, the entire territory has been carved up by these hostile pagan warlords who have absolutely zero interest in your message.
Well, none whatsoever.
And that was the actual reality of the British Isles in the year 597. But the guy sent from Rome to, conquer this terrifying frontier wasn't some fearless visionary.
No.
He was, well, basically a middle manager, a guy who tried to quit the mission before his group even crossed the English Channel.
It really completely upends our standard narrative of historical greatness, doesn't it?
Totally.
I mean, we expect these towering figures to possess this unshakable resolve from day one. But the records paint a picture of a man who was profoundly overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the disruption he was walking into.
Exactly. So welcome to the deep dive. Today we are digging into a massive stack of sources for you. We've got encyclopedia entries, academic reviews from John Carroll University, the History of Christianity blog, historical overviews from Canterbury Cathedral, All Saints stories, and Salt plus Light Media.
That's a lot of material to get through.
It is. But our mission for this deep dive is to extract the fascinating reality of St. Augustine of Canterbury. We want to separate the man from 1,400 years of myth,
Right.
and really figure out how a reluctant monk managed to navigate these intense culture clashes, pagan kings, and political chess games to lay the foundation for the English Church.
Because, frankly, the stakes here go far beyond just a simple religious mission.
Oh, for sure.
We're looking at high-stakes international diplomacy. We're looking at the psychological mechanics of mass conversion and how you actually build an institution from scratch in an environment defined by total political fragmentation.
Okay, let's unpack this from the beginning. Before we even get to the island itself, we have to look at how this whole project was initiated.
Right, back in Rome.
Exactly. So in 595, Pope Gregory the Great decides it's time to Christianize the pagan Anglo-Saxons who have settled in Britain.
A huge undertaking.
Massive.
Yeah.
So he selects Augustine, who was the prior of St. Andrew's Monastery in Rome, to lead a delegation of about 40 missionaries. And according to our sources, the inciting incident for this massive geopolitical endeavor was essentially a pun.
Yeah, it's one of those wild historical details. The historian Bede records this famous encounter where Pope Gregory was walking through the Roman slave market.
Okay.
And he saw these fair-haired slaves. When he asked about them and was told they were Angles,
Yeah.
From the island of Great Britain, he replied, non-Angli said Angli.
Not angles, but angels.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a clever bit of wordplay, sure, but it kicks off a journey that almost doesn't happen.
Almost fell apart completely.
Wait, so Augustine and his 40 companions, they head out, but they only make it as far as the Rhone Valley in modern-day France, and they just freeze.
They panic.
The psychological weight of what they're about to do, crossing the channel into these warring Saxon and Jute kingdoms, it just completely paralyzes them.
So much so that they actually send Augustine all the way back to Rome to beg the Pope to call off the expedition.
Which is wild, and Pope Gregory just refuses. He sends Augustine straight back with letters telling them to keep going.
Yeah, he wasn't taking no for an answer.
But I have to challenge Gregory's leadership strategy here. I mean, if you are launching a dangerous expedition into a hostile frontier, you usually want a charismatic zealot, right?
He thinks that.
Someone with this unshakable fire in their belly. Why send an administrator who openly wants to quit?
Well, because Gregory wasn't looking to create a fleeting moment of religious fervor. He needed someone to build a self-sustaining system.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Augustine was the trier of St. Andrew's, meaning he ran the daily logistics of the monastery while Gregory served as abbot.
So he was the operations guy.
Exactly. A charismatic zealot might go in, convert 1,000 people, and then immediately get martyred, leaving behind absolute chaos.
Right. No follow-up.
An administrator, though. An administrator knows how to establish supply lines, delegate authority, enforce discipline, and basically build an infrastructure that survives the first winter. Gregory valued pastoral competence and strict obedience way more than heroic bravery.
That distinction between the visionary and the administrator is crucial, especially because we need to address a major point of confusion for anyone casually looking into this era.
Oh, the name mix-up.
Yes. When you hear the name St. Augustine, the immediate association is the towering philosopher.
Augustine of Hippo.
Right. The guy who lived 200 years earlier, who wrote the Confessions, who had that famous quote, "Grant me chastity, but not yet."
The one associated with the legend of the boy trying to empty the sea into a hole with a shell.
Exactly, that guy. We need to be explicitly clear that the man we are discussing today is not him.
No, history frequently conflates the two, but they are very different. Augustine of Canterbury, the one we're talking about, was not a systematic or a speculative theologian at all. In fact, the academic reviews point out he introduced absolute zero original doctrinal developments.
But see, we tend to remember the brilliant ideas guys like the Hippo Augustine. But isn't the guy who actually builds the bureaucracy and executes the plan just as important?
Oh, absolutely. He was an institution builder. His theology was purely practical.
Nuts and bolts kind of stuff.
Exactly. His entire focus was on ecclesiastical discipline, standardizing the Roman liturgy, and organizing a physical church. He functioned as a conduit, transmitting late 6th century Latin orthodoxy to a completely new cultural soil, which is a different type of genius, but equally vital.
Let's look at how he actually applied that pragmatism when he finally crossed the Channel in 597. Because he didn't just walk in and start preaching, right?
No, he stepped into a very complex web of international politics.
Right. He lands on the Isle of Thanet in Kent, which is ruled by this pagan king, Æthelberht. But Æthelberht happens to be married to Bertha, a Christian princess from the neighboring Frankish kingdom.
And she had actually brought her own chaplain, Bishop Leodhard. They were already worshiping in an old Roman-era building called St. Martin's Church.
So Augustine arrives, and there's already this tiny pre-existing foothold.
Yes.
But the sanitized version of this story usually gives Queen Bertha all the credit for softening her husband's heart.
Right, the romantic narrative.
But the academic sources reveal that Bertha was actually a minor figure in Frankish politics.
Very minor.
The real muscle ensuring the mission's safe passage was the Frankish queen Brunhilde.
Now, what's fascinating here is Brunhilde's actual motivation. She supported the mission for her own political designs.
It's like having a silent investor pulling the strings of a startup. You think the project is about one thing, but the real stakeholder is 2 levels up and totally hidden.
That's a perfect analogy. Brunhilde was seeking overlordship over Kent. By sponsoring Augustine, she's planting a flag of soft power in Anglo-Saxon territory.
But wait, King Æthelberht isn't stupid. He eventually converts, the sources say possibly around Whit Sunday in 597. But why would a powerful pagan king accept these foreign missionaries if it meant risking becoming a vassal to the Franks?
That is where Æthelberht's conversion is so strategically brilliant.
Okay, how so?
Well, it was likely as much about aligning with the distant Roman pontiff to gain prestige as it was about personal faith.
Oh, so he bypasses the Franks.
Exactly. He smartly avoids direct submission to the nearby Franks by answering to Rome instead.
That is a masterstroke. And it leads to mass conversions, right? Like, reportedly 10,000 baptized on Christmas Day, 597.
10,000 in one day.
And he also issues the Dooms of Æthelberht.
Which is incredibly significant. It's the first written law in any Germanic language.
And it basically blended traditional kingship with Christian protections.
Yes, putting the church at the very top of the legal protection hierarchy.
But gaining the king is one thing. Converting the masses required a massive strategy shift from Rome. Here's where it gets really interesting, because it proves Augustine's mission was basically building the airplane while flying it.
The logistics must have been a nightmare.
Seriously. So in 601, Pope Gregory sends more missionaries, including a guy named Mellitus, but he sends them with conflicting advice.
The famous 2 letters.
Right. So the first letter, sent directly to King Æthelberht, basically says, act like Constantine, compel your followers, and smash the pagan shrines.
Very old school Roman Empire style coercion.
But then there's the second letter, the Epistola ad Mellitum.
Right, sent to Mellitus while he was still traveling.
And it says, wait, don't destroy the shrines.
A complete 180.
Gregory says to cleanse them of idols and repurpose them. And he even says don't ban animal sacrifices, just turn them into Christian festivals.
He literally compares the strategy to the Jewish festival of Sukkot.
It is such an incredible PR spin, but think about it for a second. How hard must it have been for Augustine to execute a massive top-down strategy change when communication with Rome took months?
Oh, it would be incredibly stressful. You've got orders to smash everything, and then suddenly a messenger shows up saying, wait, no, assimilate them gently.
Right.
But this marks a historic turning point in missionary strategy. It's a shift toward persuasion over coercion.
Meeting them where they are.
Exactly.
Oh.
The psychology of this gradual transition was brilliant. They were treating the pagan Anglo-Saxons much like the ancient Israelites, bringing them up to Christian practices step by step, rather than ripping away their entire culture overnight.
And while that assimilation strategy worked on the pagans, it completely backfired when Augustine tried to assert authority over the people on the island who were already Christian.
Ah, the Celtic Church.
Right, so these are the native British Christians who actually survived the Roman withdrawal centuries earlier.
And because they had been isolated from Rome, they had developed very distinct practices.
Like different Easter dates.
Different dates and an intense monastic focus. Plus, they had different tonsures.
Right, the way the monks cut their hair. So Augustine meets with them at a place later called Augustine's Oak, and he basically demands they conform to Roman customs and help him convert the Anglo-Saxons.
And here's the famous story from Bede. The British bishops consult a local hermit before making their decision.
I love this part.
The hermit says they should submit to Augustine only if he rises to greet them. It was a test of his humility.
And when they arrive, Augustine just remains seated.
He doesn't get up. So, judging him to be arrogant, they flat out refuse to submit.
But let me push back on that narrative for a second.
Yeah.
Was Augustine just socially awkward or maybe tired from the journey? Or was remaining seated a deliberate, calculated flex of Roman authority that just blew up in his face?
It was almost certainly a calculated flex. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the sources note the British reluctance wasn't really just about manners.
It was political.
Highly political. The Anglo-Saxons were their invaders. They had pushed the British out of their lands.
Yeah.
So from the perspective of the native British Christians, submitting to Augustine felt like submitting to the enemy.
Why would you help the guy who's best friends with the king who stole your land?
Exactly. But Bede, who is our main historical source for this, heavily biased this account.
Right. Bede loathed the British Christians.
He really did. He painted them as stubborn and petty, basically blaming them for the failure. While, ironically, academic reviews suggest Pope Gregory actually viewed the British Church as holy.
It's all about who controls the narrative. So synthesize this journey for us. Augustine dies around 604, right?
Yes. And honestly, he had only established a very small foothold by then. Just Canterbury, Rochester, and London.
So he didn't conquer the whole island.
Not at all. But his legacy is the 1400-year foundation of the English Church. He set up the administrative machinery.
The Archbishop of Canterbury.
Exactly. The takeaway here is the sheer power of institution building.
It's the realization that lasting progress often relies on quiet executors rather than flashy philosophers,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And the necessity of adapting your strategy in real time, like he did with the paved shrines.
Very true.
But I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, lingering thought to mull over, because history is written by the victors, sure, but it's also written by the biased.
Always.
The primary source for Augustine's life is the Venerable Bede, and Bede was a monk from the rival region of Northumbria.
A huge rival to Canterbury.
Right. So Bede deliberately minimized Augustine's personal achievements. He elevated Pope Gregory as the true mastermind to ensure Canterbury didn't outshine his own region of Northumbria.
It's a classic historical smear campaign by omission.
Exactly. So you have to wonder how much of Augustine's true personality, his struggles, and his brilliance was intentionally erased from history by a rival historian with an agenda.